I think I'm going to go ahead and start. Everybody, welcome again. We are recording this webinar, so it will be available later for you if you need to check your notes, or please let other people know about it so that they can see it online. I just want to recognize or welcome you on behalf of all the groups that are hosting this: Wild Virginia, Appalachian Voices, POWHR, and the Wilderness Society. And I'm going to introduce you to some speakers in a bit. Could we get the next slide, please? So again, this is a webinar. You folks can't chime in vocally, but we're glad to have you here, and we're glad to have your questions and your comments in the chat. We will have a number of presenters. You won't have to listen to me the whole time, much to your benefit. But I am Dave Sly with Wild Virginia. I'm a conservation director. And we also have Jess Sims from Appalachian Voices, who's helping out. Grace Tuttle from POWHR, Russell Chisholm from POWHR, Jackie Goodrum from Wild Virginia, and Hugh Irwin from the Wilderness Society. And you'll hear from all those in a bit. And again, I think Russell gave you a note, so please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. We like to know, where you're coming from. I do see a whole bunch of names that I recognize, old or long-time pipeline fighters, but I also see some new names, which is great. This movement seems to continue to grow the longer we're in it. Again, if you have questions along the way, please put them in the chat. And towards the end, we're trying to leave plenty of time to get to as many of those as we can. And just a quick rundown of what you're going to hear. First, kind of what's the Mountain Valley Pipeline about and what's at stake. Again, old timers will know that, but some of you might not, so it's good to get a catch up. What's the process that we're in here, and how does it fit into the overall fight? The Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management notice that we are responding to, that comments will be responding to. Some kind of general hints on how to make comments, and specific hints on things that would be useful for this set of comments. And then we're gonna get your questions, and we'll wrap up and tell you where you can get more information after we're done tonight. So next slide, please. And I'm going to hand it over to Grace Tuttle, and she's going to tell you a little bit of MVP history and what's at play here.
All right, thanks, Dave. Yeah, I am Grace Tuttle. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the advocacy director at POWHR Coalition. And POWHR stands for Protect Our Water Heritage Rights. And we are an interstate coalition made up of individuals and groups from Virginia and West Virginia who are dedicated to protecting water, land, and communities from harms caused by projects like the Mountain Valley Pipeline. And that's what I'm here to talk about tonight. And so many of you are already well too familiar with this project or are directly impacted community members of this project. But I want to extend a welcome to anyone who is new, just as Dave did, or joining us for the first time. We're really glad that you're here, and your voice is super important. So I'm going to give a quick overview of this project, so feel free to tune out if this is the last thing you want to hear about right now. But for those of you that are new, here's what's going on. So the MVP is a 303-mile proposed, partially constructed fracked gas pipeline that is routed through steep slopes and pristine waters of West Virginia and Virginia. And it also would connect with a proposed Southgate extension pipeline that would go 75 miles into 2 counties in North Carolina. Now, the movement and POWHR and all of our wonderful allies who are here tonight have been fighting this for almost a decade. Construction began in 2018 after widespread public opposition that continues to grow, but delays have continued to occur after MVP has lost lots of its permits. Its costs have ballooned from 3.5 billion to 6.5 billion. And you may hear in the news that MVP is 94% complete, because that's what the company likes to say. However, that is a misleading number. It is the remaining work to be done on this project is the most difficult and complex construction work in the steepest areas, and it doesn't include the final stage of construction. So it's actually only 55.8% complete to final restoration. Next slide. All right, so what has the MVP done in this partially constructed state already, and why are we opposing it? So just to go a little bit deeper into that, the construction of this project has already done significant harm to local environments. It has damaged indigenous, cultural, and sacred sites. It has negatively impacted elderly and rural communities and the residents' livelihoods of those communities. Personal wells have been damaged by construction, loss of clean drinking water, generational farms have been rendered unusable. And construction of the MVP has impacted sites on ancestral and traditional homelands of the Monacan Indian Nation, Occaneechi, Saponi, and Tutelo tribes. And the MVP is routed through many counties that are low income, elderly populations, and medically underserved populations. And the Southgate extension would be routed through multiple indigenous communities and communities of color. Another reason is that natural gas demand is actually going down, and we all know that we need to be transitioning in a just transition off of fossil fuels. And the MVP does not help domestic energy security, despite the rumors that are out there. And MVP has accrued more than 500 violations already, with hundreds of water crossings remaining of water quality protections and over 1,500 violations of upland or steep hilly area activities of water quality protections. So hundreds upon hundreds of violations have already been wrought. And Appalachian communities and many other sacrifice zone communities are too often the targets of this type of extraction and greed at the cost of our precious mountains, our health, our water, and so many species. And on that note, this project also threatens 5 endangered species at least, including the Roanoke log perch and the famous candy darter fish. And almost 75% of this project route is through moderate or high risk of landslide terrain. And the highest total percentage of landslide terrain for any pipeline of this diameter to be proposed. And there's just overwhelming evidence that this project has no place here or anywhere. And if this pipeline were to be completed and put into service, the greenhouse gas emissions would be equivalent to 19 million cars, at least 1% of greenhouse gases produced by US energy sector. So next slide, please. This is just a quick video from a directly impacted community member. Hi, Robin, if you're on tonight, to get you excited about writing comments and to say again that everybody has a role to play in this fight, and welcome no matter what stage you're joining us from or where you're joining us from. So thanks, Jess.
I'm Robin Austin. I grew up in the Roanoke Valley. This is my paradise. I don't feel like I need to leave this mountain for a vacation. I've never considered myself an activist. I do consider myself someone who stands up for what I believe in strongly, but not what you would consider an activist. But that's what I've become, and I'm very proud to be one at this age. They talk about not in my backyard. Until you've had something come to your backyard, that's as impactful as something like a 42-inch natural gas pipeline, you don't understand. But not just in your backyard, but the entire community and beyond. The impacts that something of this massive construction has on an area is immeasurable, and what it does for the future. And that's one of my biggest concerns. What are we doing to the future with things like this? Not many people, really understand what it means to support your community in the way we are trying to support our community. It's just so many reasons to become involved. Don't allow yourself to just say, it's not in my backyard, I don't need to worry about it. Everybody needs to be concerned. You can be an advocate, and you don't have to be holding a protest sign. You can just talk to people. That's my biggest takeaway.
Okay, thanks, Grace. And that was a beautiful video. One of the many people who inspire those of us who keep working on this all these years. Even for people who have been involved, sometimes all of the different moving parts in this campaign are kind of bewildering. There have been so many court cases, so many agency processes that I always like to kind of lay out a little bit about where we are now. This slide, of course, has way too many words, and I don't expect to go through them all, but it is important to know that this process we're in now, it involves approvals from both the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management, which MVP needs because those agencies incorrectly gave them approvals twice before. The courts invalidated those approvals twice. And so now they're trying again. The same is true of the Army Corps of Engineers, which has a Clean Water Act permit, without which MVP can't cross lots of our waters. And finally, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that works under the Endangered Species Act, again, has tried a couple of times to supposedly do their job, and they failed. And so, and I think it's important, again, to point out that they failed because of all of us. They failed because there were good comments, there were facts, and there were important information in the comments that everybody filed. Because without those, you cannot win in court. And so that's why this is so important. And it doesn't matter if you're a lawyer or a scientist. You know things, you have interest and values in these places that are important. So we'll probably say many times during this show that your voice matters, but never doubt it. We are still waiting on 3 court decisions that are very important. And again, if we win any or all of those, would put some huge roadblocks into MVP's path. Just like yesterday, our attorney argued a case in the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals against the Virginia State Water Control Board. We had an argument against the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection last year on the same issues. And finally, we have cases against the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So there's a lot still going on. There's a lot of chances for us to put big roadblocks in MVP's way and to stop this thing. So don't think that it's not possible. Of course, after 8 years, people should finally figure out that we still have a lot of power. But I want you to understand that. Anyhow, next, I'm going to pass it off to Hugh Irwin from the Wilderness Society, who's going to talk a little bit about what the Forest Service and BLM have solicited comments about. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. Great to be here with you. This Forest Service draft supplemental environmental impact statement was released December 23rd of last year during the holidays with a 45-day comment period. So comments are due February 6th. So, you know, we're facing that deadline. And as David mentioned, it's really important that the Forest Service hears from as many people as possible. And, you know, each person has a unique perspective on this project that the Forest Service and BLM should hear. This draft supplemental is rather narrow in its focus because it seeks to address the Fourth Circuit Court decision that threw out the Forest Service's and BLM's original permitting of the pipeline through Jefferson National Forest. And, you know, the supplemental tries to focus just on those issues that the Fourth Circuit specified, but the supplemental, this is a statement in the supplemental EIS. The supplemental analysis addresses the issues identified by the court and any relevant new information and changed circumstances. That new information and changed circumstances, you know, is really broad. The Forest Service is focused pretty narrowly on the items identified by the Fourth Circuit Court, but you know, we shouldn't feel confined by that. If you have new information or know of changed circumstances, you know, definitely mention that. Next slide. But to the extent that you can, you know, even if you bring up new information or changed circumstances, bringing that back around to the core issues that the court, you know, identified will probably be useful, both in, you know, the Forest Service process, because if it doesn't relate to those, they're likely to ignore it. And also it gives us, you know, additional ammunition in future court cases. But the proposed actions in the draft supplemental, the Forest Service proposes to modify 11 forest plan standards to allow Mountain Valley Pipeline to cross Jefferson National Forest. And these are core standards and guidelines in the Jefferson National Forest Plan that guide management, and those would be fundamentally changed to allow the pipeline to cross Jefferson National Forest. They're also proposing terms and conditions for Mountain Valley Pipeline construction and operation, and then BLM issuance of a right-of-way through Jefferson National Forest, even though the Forest Service is in charge of Jefferson National Forest, BLM also has to approve the right-of-way. So BLM is involved in this as well. Next slide. And there are really three key issues that the supplemental draft EIS focuses on. The first of these is the consideration of sedimentation and erosion, real-world data related to the project. The original EIS relied on modeling to predict sedimentation and degradation of streams. There's a lot of problems with those models. And that's one reason the Forest Circuit threw out the Forest Service and BLM decision, because the Forest Service didn't really look at the real world impacts of this. They were just relying on the models. So to the extent that you can address this, it would be great. Next slide. Then another key issue is compliance with the 2012 planning rule. And, you know, you don't have to know the details of the planning rule. it guides the Forest Service management and how they put together plans. But some key concepts in the planning rule, one is ecosystem integrity. And a forest plan must include plan components, including standards and guidelines to maintain or restore the ecological integrity of terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems and watersheds in the plan area, including plan components to maintain or restore function, composition, and connectivity. And, important aspects of that ecosystem integrity are soils and soil productivity, including guidance to reduce soil erosion and sedimentation, water quality, water resources, and riparian areas. And so a lot of these standards and guidelines that the Forest Service is considering changing to allow Mountain Valley Pipeline are specifically to address these ecosystem integrity issues. This also would be a really important point to focus on. Next slide. And then the final issue is the original Forest Service permit was to allow trenching across the water bodies to get across Jefferson National Forest. This provision would allow boring instead of trenching. But those are the main issues. But again, those are just kind of a narrow view that the Forest Service and BLM are taking. And there are likely other issues like, climate change that, aren't adequately addressed in the EIS that relate to these issues, especially ecosystem integrity. So, you shouldn't feel confined to just focus on these, but these are the main issues that the Forest Service and BLM are looking at. And with that, I'll turn it over, I think, to Jacqueline.
Yes, thanks, Hugh. That was a great overview. So before we talk about what specifically to include in your comment content-wise, we wanted to take a moment and talk about what makes a good comment, what makes a comment effective. I'm Jackie Goodrum. I'm with Flawed, Virginia. I'm the Conservation Policy Associate, and I'm also a published legal writer. So that's why I get to talk to you about writing things. So an effective comment is one that clearly and convincingly communicates your opinion about the agency's action. It also is, it provides information and insight that has the potential to influence the agency's decision. And that's the whole point of submitting a comment in support or opposition to an agency action, is you're trying to influence their decision in some way by providing them with information or perspective that they don't have. So the characteristics of effective public comments, they are relevant. That means that they're closely related. They're within the scope of the question that the agency is looking at. It identifies the question that the agency is asking and also what information the agency is lacking. You can find this in the public notice. The agency will specifically state that they seek comment on X, Y, and Z. Relevant comments are also connected. They're appropriate information that is missing that the agency has not considered or just totally ignored. Effective comments are also organized. There's a clear introduction or greeting. There's a body text where you make your key points, and there's also a conclusion, and there's a clear transition between these paragraphs. So effective comments also connect your experience to the question asked. And this is where it's so important to have so many people use their voices to express their opinion, because your experience, as Dave was saying, it is valuable and it matters. You have a particular perspective that no one else does on a particular issue. You might even have professional or personal expertise that you can bring to this question that the agency is seeking information for. And so what you want to do in order to make sure that your comment is effective is that you want to connect your personal or professional experience to the question, the information that the agency is seeking. We'll talk about a little bit more about what that means in a moment, but it essentially articulates your reason and your authority for commenting. Effective comments also provide information and offer insights. Information means facts, evidence that the agency can reasonably rely on to support its decision. Any data you have, any photos, these are all included in that factual information that you can offer in your comment. Insight is more just the perspectives or particular analysis, whether expert or personal, that the agency lacks but requires in order to make a reasonable and legally defensible decision. And finally, effective comments refrain from personal insult. And this can be difficult because this is an emotional topic. There are people's livelihoods, there are people's lands, there are people's family histories, there's people's health at stake. And so we can get worked up about this, and that's okay. That anger is justified, but channel that into an effective comment by critiquing and criticizing the agency's actions rather than personally attacking the officials who work for the agency. And the reason you want to do this is, first, it's our job as citizens to hold the government accountable, and submitting comments is one way that we can do that. If our words make them feel bad about the poor job they've done, that's okay. We don't want to make them feel bad about who they are identity-wise, because it's not helpful. They may stop reading the comment, and you might have good information in there that they need in order to make a truly informed decision. You want to focus on their actions and not on their identity, because those comments that include personal attacks are not going to positively influence the agency's decision-making, and the end result might be that the person responsible for document revisions or changes to this action might not make these changes simply because of the way that the comments were made. Sorry, we should be next slide. A couple of slides down. Sorry, perfect. So experience is knowledge and impact. And this is where you can really shine and use your voice to grant your, show your authority for why you are commenting and why the agency should listen to what you have to say. So your knowledge can be personal familiarity with an affected area, a project area, or a proposed action, or maybe this is just something that you're really into and you know a lot about climate change, as an example. Or it could also be professional expertise. You could have particular training in this particular, in the particular issues that the agency is looking into. And so combining your knowledge with the impact. What is the impact of the agency's decision on your household, your land, your livelihood, or your community? And that can be in the macro scale or in the micro scale, whether it's just like you are someone who is directly impacted by the Mountain Valley Pipeline, or you're a citizen of the United States or in the world who's really concerned about the long-term impacts of fossil fuels and climate change. Next slide. So now we're going to talk a little bit about crafting your comment. And some pre-writing prep, things to do before you actually start writing. So you want to gather some information first, and most importantly, you need to read the public notice. It's not that long, it's on the Forest Service website. You need to read it and find out what is the agency asking, what information is the agency seeking. If you don't have time to do this, or you're not comfortable doing this, then we will have lots of links at the end that provide sort of summaries and information with talking points on what the agency is asking for and what we think you should say. You should also check out the submission deadline. We've also made this very clear in our documents. It's February 6th, 2023. Also, who's the comment recipient? Who do you need to address your comment to? Sometimes it's a particular person, sometimes it's just the agency and no one particularly is listed. Also, what are the submission methods? How are you going to submit your comment? The Forest Service has several options, and we'll go through those briefly in a few moments, but the easiest way and the way we suggest is writing your comment separately in like Google Docs or a Word document, and then probably just emailing it or uploading it to their submission file. And we'll go into that in a little more detail. And identify the comment scope. What's the question being asked? This way, you know that your information that you're providing is going to be relevant. And then also you need to gather any background information or facts that you need to support your statement. Next slide. So again, as you start to gather your information before you begin writing, think critically about what you will say, what do you want to say, and how you're going to organize it. And the reason you want to do this, just to take a few moments to think about what are you going to say, what do you want to say, how are you going to organize things, is that the person who's responsible for reading your comment may have hundreds or thousands of comments to read. So you want to frame your comment in a clear, concise, and convincing manner to get your point across, and you want your reader to be able to follow your argument clearly. Next slide. And finally, just some little writing tips and hints for best practices for writing statements that are clear and convincing. Use because statements. There's an example there. The agency must examine groundwater impacts because our household relies on underground wells for drinking water. So connect any kind of claim you make to a reason for why the agency should or should not do something. Use because statements. Another writing tip is use ordered lists. This is just a really simple trick for organizing your thoughts as well as organizing your reasons and your evidence. Just first, second, third, separate paragraphs. Very clean, very easy to do. Another suggestion is showing and not telling. What this means is that when you are describing something, you want to do more than just tell the agency what has or has not happened. You want to use descriptive words to describe to them. You want to show them what has happened, create a word picture in their mind. And finally, assert your authority early. And so that experience that we were talking about, personal, professional, whatever your reason is and your justification for writing this comment, assert it early in that first paragraph when you're writing your introduction, when you're introducing yourself, say who you are and why you're commenting. Maybe it's something like this example where you're submitting this comment in opposition because you have decades of experience paddling this particular river that's going to be impacted by this project. So I think now it's time to go on to Grace. Thanks, everyone.
All right, everybody. We're going to get into some specific talking points that are options for you to include in your comments. And I want to preface this section by saying that it's probably going to feel super overwhelming, especially if this is maybe your first time writing a comment. So I would recommend just listening to me and not like trying to write anything down or copy all these points or think about all of them. Just listen, take it in. We'll send you all these resources. Maybe jot down if one of these jumps out at you or if you have a personal connection to anything like Jackie just talked about. So just try not to stress about how much info there's about to be, okay? So the first thing that you want to consider including is actually requesting an extension of this comment period. Hugh mentioned that this notice was released several days before the Christmas holiday, and a bunch of days in this comment period were taken up when people were off work and not having time to deal with this. So include a request for an extension of the comment period because it's great for them to see that more people would want that, would want more time and care about this and are engaged. Next slide, please. One thing that's really important to include, and that I know we have a question about it, and I welcome Dave to further extrapolate on this later, but you want to include something along the lines of urging the Forest Service to select alternative 1. They have several alternative choices that they can choose to endorse here. And alternative 1 would be no action. And that would mean not changing the forest plan, not amending the forest plan, not recommending that the BLM also grant right-of-way to the MVP, the Bureau of Land Management, and not changing those 11 parts of the forest plan to allow the project to go through the forest. So that can kind of fall out of your head when you're thinking about all these other issues. Just remember in your comment to include that urging them not to allow the MVP to cross the forest and not to amend the forest plan. And something along the lines of how the Jefferson National Forest and our public lands were established to restore and protect water quality and protect our ecosystems and, preserve the commons and protect water resources. And the MVP is in complete opposition to this purpose. And again, that you urge the Forest Service to not amend the forest plan, to not allow the MVP to cross the forest, and to not provide concurrence to the BLM for a right-of-way. Next slide, please. And again, I will say we will send all of this to you after so you can tangle with this language, and just putting in another plug for personalizing things. When the agencies get a lot of form letters, sometimes they count those as one comment. So the more you can personalize, the better. So see if anything sticks out at you that you want to expand on. So another important thing to tell the agency is that the U.S. Forest Service claims that waters will not be further impacted. That claim is not credible. The agency continues to rely on theoretical models of what might happen pollution-wise, rather than real-world proof of damages that you all have provided for years, like we've talked about building the record with all of your contributions and your lived experience and your observation. And importantly, like others have mentioned, describe how you use the forest or how you use the waters and all of the resources in the forest and how that might be impacted by the MVP. Additionally, like Hugh mentioned, climate change impacts are not appropriately addressed in here, or the climate impacts of the forest or to the forest, let alone the impacts of the MVP to climate change. And again, really important to mention any personal experience or observation that you have about negative water quality impacts the MVP has already caused. Next slide, please. And I'm going to turn it over to Jess for this one.
Thanks so much, Grace. And if we haven't met before, I'm Jessica Sims. I'm the Virginia Field Coordinator for Appalachian Voices. Appreciate everybody being here this evening. Some of the resources that we are going to share are some really specific talking points. Grace covered some really important parts of this, making it personal, talking about what you know, care about, have felt, have seen, have experienced related to this issue. And so one of the other ways you can be very specific in your comments is responding to the actual amendments and what would be changed. And so that covers some broader issues, soil health, forest health. So I just want to dive into that a little bit, and then we're going to actually go to the Forest Service website and take a look at the ways in which you can submit so we can all get more comfortable with the website. So again, you're going to get all of these resources. Don't feel like you have to remember everything we're saying right now. So we know that obviously we've seen it with all of the pre-construction and construction. Construction would bring more negative impacts to soil health. And one specific way that that's particularly detrimental to the JNF, to the Jefferson National Forest, are impacts to the riparian zones that are along waterways. And we know those should be protected because they are unique. They have unique attributes that we do not want to interfere with. They are buffering waterways from sediment, from runoff. They are keeping banks stabilized. They are providing shade. They are regulating the temperatures of the water, and they are providing food sources for ecosystems and keeping that ecosystem stabilized. So within our talking points, you can see the specific amendment that we are, or amendments that are on soil, those that are on the forest. So you can incorporate that into what you're saying. We know that old growth forests should be protected, and that the removal of them, like that in the Jefferson National Forest, is eliminating a source of topsoil. It's eliminating a better source of carbon and nitrogen retention. They do that better than younger forests. And we are, again, harming the species in that area, especially in a vulnerable interior forest setting. So again, harming ecosystems, diversity, ecosystem integrity. One of the other amendments that they are affecting is related to scenic view sheds. And so we've seen, not just with Forest Service, but basically every agency filing that Mountain Valley Pipeline has had, they are minimizing impacts. This is another example of that. They are minimizing in their filings, in their requests, the impacts to scenic view sheds. So that's something you can talk about, and you can use your personal experience to kind of frame it. So we contend that they continue to minimize the impacts of view shed, of noise, of dust, visual intrusions. Additionally, you have the opportunity to sort of point out what Grace talked about earlier, which is the lack of need for this, and that by changing these plans, the agency is saying this utility corridor is necessary and its economic benefits outweigh the environmental harm. We know that's false, and that's a comparison that is unfair. And we've seen already with 500 water quality violations in Virginia and West Virginia that absolutely not. There's no benefit to this. There's not some economic benefit that is going to outweigh this. And so they have a specific responsibility to make sure that's not happening. And they are, as an agency, minimizing those impacts. Additionally, there's scenic integrity objectives that they have to comply with. And so the way they've set it up, or what they've proposed for the Forest Service to accept, is that they'd have 5 years after completion of construction to attain the scenic integrity objectives that are required by law. But they are missing a key possibility, and they're not addressing what happens if they don't complete construction. So you can also point out things that you feel are wrong with the process, and then relate them back to your personal experience and how that would impact your time and participation in the Jefferson National Forest. So you've got the great tips from Jackie on how to really go about formulating it. You've got some talking points from Grace that are, a large umbrella down to very specific things. And you have some amendment specific things you can talk about too. So now you're moving over to, I'm going to start drafting, and then I want to submit. What does that process look like? And so I want to point out, just make sure get the next slide on there. Prepare your comment in a separate document. You definitely don't want to start making it on the Forest Service website and then have that crash and lose all that wonderful information you wanted to share. So Jackie mentioned there are a couple ways to submit. We're talking mailing in your comment, printing it and mailing it, or handwriting it and mailing it. Emailing, which they don't prefer, but they have acquiesced that they've provided an email address, which we will share in the chat, or submitting your comment directly to the Forest Service website. When you do that, your comment is going to be public. It's going to be basically in a library of public comments. So that can be helpful to actually see what others are writing. And we'll go over some of those steps quickly. So you can submit a comment directly to the site. You can email a comment. Make sure you're working separately. There's even quicker ways too. We have a couple petitions that you can just click, fill out your name, and sign. You can do all of the above. That's very helpful too. So a personal comment is really great. Signing a petition is also very helpful. And telling people about this comment period before February 6th is another way to do so. So I'm just showing you, hold this thought as we look at this image. This is actually what the top of the Forest website looks like. And I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment because we are going to actually pull up the website, and I'm going to show you what it looks like just to familiarize you. And some of y'all have probably already been to it. But this is the website that has all the project information and some important links. So I'm here in the Forest Service website, part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I'm scrolling down. It's got some information about the new comment period. I want to highlight, if you're trying to find the public documents, the link is here. And then there's also a link, although it's not hyperlinked, for the public reading room. And that's where you could go and see what other people are saying and submitting. So Grace mentioned this too. they're sort of classifying comments in a couple different ways. So there's the letter that you're submitting on the form. It's from you. It's your own comment. Maybe you're emailing it. Maybe you're mailing it. They're calling that a letter. They're further qualifying it as unique if it's one of a kind. If you sign a petition, they're counting all of those signatures, but they may count them together. If you are doing form comments where everybody is submitting the exact same thing onto the website, they also qualify that in a different way too. So it's helpful to submit in a variety of ways. Every way is fine, but the Forest Service, just to keep in mind, will qualify that and will use that when they're coming up with their totals. And so the more personal, one-to-one comments that we can submit, that's even more helpful. So you're on this website, they're kind of laying out all their rules for how they qualify stuff. And they're also flagging, if there's something substantive, if your comment has an attachment with it, you're adding pictures, you're adding written files or documentation, that's fantastic. So if you want to submit via email, I'm going to ask, and maybe you already did it, Jackie, to put that in the chat, the email address. And thank you so much. We'll provide that too. But the other way you can submit is directly on the website. And this is a form that you're going to fill out. So all this information at the top, this part is not going to be shared publicly. This is for their purposes and if they wanted to contact you or had a question. So you fill this information out. And then if you continue to scroll down, this is where you're going to put your comment, your letter, what you want to say to them about this request to bend 11 rules. Anything you put in this box is public, so keep that in mind, that you would not want to put your address or your email address or your phone number or anything you don't want out in the world onto this, because it's going to go into that library of comments. And then right here is where you're making attachments, you're choosing, whatever file you need and submitting it with that. So that can be pictures or PDFs, a Word document, anything you want to go with your comment. So you've got a couple options for how to do this, and we'll have all these resources when we follow up with you too. You might be seeing some in the chat. Thank you so much, Russell. You've got quick petitions you can sign, a website you can go to, and then we have an actual how-to kit that can help you walk through this stage by stage. Wild Virginia's put together a great how-to, and the POWHR Coalition has another document too that takes you through all the steps of the Forest Service, familiarizing yourself with it generally, and then the current comment periods. So you can use this video in the recording, or you can have one of these kits with you while you're kind of going through this. So those are a couple options of how you're going to submit, and you have until midnight, right? I think 11:59. Let me make sure. I think it says it up here actually. Comments are requested through midnight. So if you're finishing dinner and you're moved to send something else in, or you're getting close and it's getting nighttime, you're okay. You've got till midnight.
Make sure it's 11:59, not midnight.
Yes, in before midnight. Pardon. They will not accept it after that time, and you want to make sure that you've got that great info submitted. So now I'm going to.
And I would urge people to be a little proactive in that, because this CARA site can get, if everybody waits till 11:59, it can get overburdened. And there have been cases where the site basically doesn't work, as it approaches midnight. So I would get it in a little bit sooner if at all possible.
That's a really good point. And having some of these resources near you in case something happens and you can just email it as a backup, that's super helpful too. So I want to go ahead. We have I'll show this slide really quick just so we can say we showed it, because we're now, I believe, at our Q&A time. where I'm going to turn it back over to Russell to raise some of the questions that y'all have submitted. Thank you so much in the chat and in the Q&A.
Thank you, Jess. I'm going to start with the Q&A. We had a two-part question from Elizabeth, and it looks like David was trying to answer that. I don't know if y'all want me to read that question or if you want me to try to follow up with Elizabeth after the webinar on those items.
Maybe I'll just chime in real quick, Russell, and
Okay.
Elizabeth can tell me if I didn't answer her question, but simply, you don't want them to amend the forest plan. It's as simple as that. Don't worry about any previous amendments or the Forest Management Act. They can't change the act, but I think you have it stated. The simpler way you have it stated is right. Don't amend the plan. But if that's not clear, let me know.
Thank you, David. And a couple questions were answered in the chat. Thanks to Dave and Maury for the information about the watersheds that do drain into the New River. Those threats are definitely there. We will share some more resources out about that after the call. We have a question from West Virginia Rivers. Hello, West Virginia Rivers. If submitting a physical letter, does it have to be postmarked on the 6th or received by the 6th? Good question.
Let's come back to that as I look it up quickly.
We'll hand deliver that one. Question from Anita: would submitting specific information with pictures from a related site, specifically North Fork Valley Rural Historic District, be helpful, or must it info only come from the Jefferson National Forest sites?
If you're talking about another site that is affected by the pipeline, even if it's not on the forest, yes, because the same kind of impacts are important. You know, they're illustrative of what can happen to the forest. Certainly, the Forest Service has already claimed to look at a lot of the water quality impacts that are way off of the forest, because they are the best example of what kind of damage they would cause in the forest also. I hope that makes sense.
Thanks, Dave. Louisa asks, is there a public version of the geosyntax analysis of sedimentation that the Forest Service uses in the draft supplemental EIS?
I don't believe that we've been able to acquire the detailed analysis. We have been trying, but I do not think that we have it, unfortunately. And that's one thing to complain about, to say, hey, you issued this public notice and you didn't give us all the information that we should have had. One of the things we've seen is some folks have pointed out that some new stuff has shown up on the Forest Service website within the last day or two. That's not proper, and that's something to point out also.
Thanks, Dave. And real quick, folks, we are going to capture all of these questions and the replies from the chat for follow-up. Just scrolling back here to see if I have missed anything from earlier in the presentation. I don't see anything that I've missed. Please bump your question back up in the chat if I have. Great questions from everyone, and we will follow up with the answers as we've captured them here.
Great. Well, that's yeah, thanks for the good questions. Here's one more. Does MVP affect any part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed? One small part, which is Craig Creek, which is in the far upper James River Basin. It's a beautiful place. It is partly within the forest, the National Forest. So it's very, and it's one of my favorite places in the world. So yeah, that's part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed.
We had a request from Victoria to show the image, and Grace has dropped the link to Appalachian Voices' excellent MVP status report.
Great.
Victoria, that report is where I got that image from. So that's an excellent report for checking out all the details.
And I just to go back to Tyler's first question, still looking to see, my presumption is it just needs to be postmarked, but we also have a point of contact with the Forest Service that we can check on that and make sure to get back to you.
I would not take for granted that postmarked is good enough unless we find out for sure. Okay.
I'll also add if there's somebody that needs something postmarked or needs to send a physical letter and needs help with like scanning or PDFing something, any of us would be glad to help, an individual submit a letter electronically to make sure it gets there.
Okay. Is that, did we have anything else? If not,
Just wanted to highlight for folks another opportunity coming up on February the 2nd from West Virginia Rivers Coalition. Registration link there in the chat for you. And thanks to West Virginia Rivers Coalition for all they have done on this effort over the years as well.
yeah. Okay. Well, I guess it's time to wrap up then. I think maybe Jess, you have some things you can tell people.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. Sorry.
No problem.
So we've got, excuse me, some resources we'll make sure to get to you, and we'll follow up with a confirmation about if you're actually mailing something, how soon it needs to be in. But we've got the quick to use, easy to use blog from Wild Virginia on this. We'll have the information from App Voices, which is just a click to sign, easy to share petition where you can add a small personalized comment, and we will submit that for you. We've got the comment guide, including the one from the POWHR Coalition, and that includes a link to the specific talking points that Grace and I covered this evening. We also want to make sure that y'all have it on your calendars to learn more and participate in a comment party that West Virginia Rivers is having on February 2nd. And that's going to cover both U.S. Forest Service and the other comment period that's going on right now with the U.S. Army Corps. So they're doing double duty. We're really thankful for that. So we're going to send you the recording, the slides, and all the links after this event, probably tomorrow, and have lots of great resources for you to use. I know all of us are happy to help. If you want to reach out to us, we'll have our contact information there too. If we can answer questions, give us a ring, send us an email if you're having any problems or need some more info as we move closer to that end of the comment period.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for being here. You will get a follow-up email, and we're anxious to see all your letters come pouring into the Forest Service. All right. I'm going to stop recording now.